So all of these sources are related in the way that they all talk about the economic unrest in Latin American countries and how different governments tried different strategies to fix it. So in Kingstone P, Democracy Development and the Pink Tide, the chapter's focus is on the political and economic shifts in Latin America during the Pink Tide period, which was when a wave of left-wing governments rose to power and pushed towards socialism more than capitalism or neoliberalism. So the governments in Venezuela, Brazil, and Bolivia wanted to reduce the wage gap and inequality in these governments due to the current neoliberalism practices, and they made positive changes. They reduced poverty, and they increased education. They also had some negative effects like corruption and economic instability. So the chapter argues that the Pink Tide overall did not fix the deep-rooted issues and only fixed issues that were in the moment. In Castillo, Ponce, Arre, and Lai K on Argentina's currency crisis of 2018, it discusses Argentina's currency crisis, how they decided to basically float the peso. So they allowed the peso's value to depend on the market. So if the market was higher or lower, the peso's value depended on that. It led to a depreciation of the currency. So you would have to use a lot more pesos to buy one thing than you did at the beginning. Argentina's debt increased. This created social instability and unrest. And the chapter basically argued that this was not a smart decision for Argentina's future. In Reisenbeck D and Calderon de Burgos G, The Economist Gets It Wrong on Dollarization in Argentina, this article critiques The Economist magazine, and when they said that Argentina should dollarize its economy because they believed that it would solve Argentina's economic issues like inflation, they argued that dollarization would provide relief and stop inflation. But the only issue with this is that Argentina would no longer have its own central bank. It would be controlled by the U.S. Federal Reserve. And so Argentina wouldn't have any control over its own interest rates or printing of money. That would all be from the U.S. So although it might fix inflation temporarily, Argentina would have no way to adjust to the economic imbalances that would happen. In Rodriguez JP, The Politics of Neoliberalism in Latin America, Dynamics of Resilience and Contestation, it talks about how neoliberal economic policies, which are pretty much capitalist, have been implemented in Latin America. So once again, this article is very similar to Castillo Ponce's in the way that these policies did help with certain current issues and improved some economic growth and allowed some people to shoot higher and increase infrastructure, but it created a large wealth gap, which causes poverty and just general social unrest and anger. So that didn't really work either. In Dollarizing Argentina by Planet Money on NPR, they also discussed the idea of dollarizing Argentina's economy, where the Argentine peso would be replaced with the US dollar. So it could reduce inflation and create stability, but over time this would not be a good decision because it would completely lose Argentina's power to control their own economy. So yeah, and this would not address any underlying economic issues in Argentina. From Riches to Rags, Venezuela's Economic Crisis, the Big Picture series, Al Jazeera, explains what happened in Venezuela, the economic collapse. So Venezuela's country was one of the wealthiest in Latin America. It had a ton of oil reserves, but Venezuela relied much too heavily on these oil reserves for their economy, and the oil revenues were mismanaged. Millions of Venezuelans had to leave the country to find better opportunities, caused a ton of poverty, and it was a huge failure of the economy and of the government. So the economy spiraled, oil prices fell, and there was tons of inflation, not enough basic goods for everyone, and living standards declined, poverty increased heavily. So this was not a good solution to the issues either. In all of these, it's discussed how deeply rooted the issues of Latin America's government or economic and government is, probably because of the way that they were colonized and taken over and didn't have time to create their own economies, as discussed in the last video. But the general argument is that these solutions are not effective, and there needs to be other solutions that cause stronger economic policies, and also address social inequality and not just the economy.